Good afternoon, folks. East Coast time. Good morning, folks. West Coast time. And good evening, good night, folks. India time. And actually, early morning, folks, because we have a participation from Korea also. So, Korea time. Thank you very much for joining the Saturday noon hour hosted by the US India Political Action Committee and the Imagine India Institute. My name is Robinder Sachdev, and I'm the president of Image India Institute. Every Saturday, we pick up a topic of interest to the Indian American community and also the wider US India relations. This week, we picked up a topic which is, of course, sensitive, always, and important, extremely critical, always in US India relations, which is a topic related to the area, sector, collaboration, cooperation in defense. We have a fantastic panel with us of thinkers, advisors, consultants, scholars who've been working in this space for a long, long while. And we would look to pick their brains and their views on where the relationship is headed. Folks, this is going Facebook Live on the US India Political Action Committee page, as well as on the Imagine India Institute page. Please pop up your questions, your comments, check by, wave by, come by. I'm sure our panel would be more than happy to take your questions and weave them into their answers. That said, may I invite our panel to the studio, please? We have with us Sanjay Puri, Chairman and Founder of the US India Political Action Committee. Welcome, Sanjay, sir.
Thank you, Robinder.
We have with us Anupam Srivastava, a non-resident fellow at the Stimson Center on Trade, Technology and Security Program. Welcome, Anupam, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have with us Kriti Upadhyay, a research associate with the Wadhwani Chair in US India Policy Studies at the CISS. Welcome, Kriti ji.
Hi, Robinder. Good to be here.
Thank you. We have with us Dr. Lakhvinder Singh, Director of the Peace Program at the Asia Institute in Seoul. Welcome, Dr. Lakhvinder.
Hello, many thanks for having me. Thank you.
A pleasure. Folks, so this is a panel that we have, and for the next 1 hour, we'll dive into, explore the area of defense, cooperation, collaboration between the US and India. Folks, whoever is watching, please do keep on popping your questions, likes. You cannot dislike, unfortunately, because Zuckerberg doesn't allow that. So any likes you are welcome to put, but more than that, we'll welcome your comments and questions to the panel. That said, let me start with opening thoughts. So the discussion will proceed in rounds. We'll have an opening round. Each speaker panelist would give their opening thoughts, then another few rounds, and then a final wrap-up round. In this opening round, may I invite Anupam Srivastava for your opening thoughts and remarks on where you see US-India defense relations in the now, today, and going ahead. Anupam, yours, please.
Thank you, Ravinder, and thank you for organizing this important interaction. My greetings to everybody on watching. This is a very important piece of the overall US-India relationship. What I mean is the overarching strategic relationship the United States has with India has very important pieces on technology, on economy, on the civil space program, and a lot of multilateral and international institutions level work. But the defense piece of it, and that extending into the larger strategic relationship that they have, this is going to be a very important piece. I expect there to be an essential continuity from the Trump administration going into the Biden administration. But there will be a shift of emphasis in certain areas. There will be, in addition to all of that, a little more focus, which is a traditional, slightly right-of-center democratic approach, which is on what's going on in Kashmir, a little more intrusive approach, and trying to find out and ascertain what's happening on the human rights front and things like that. But overall, the essential strategic dimensions of US-India relationship will continue and grow. There'll be a couple of irritants as well, which I will mention in later discussions. But you can see the evidence already. Tony Blinken, Secretary of State, has stated the desire to continue and expand the relationship. General Lloyd Austin has said that they would like to operationalize further the US-India relationship and India's status as a major defense partner. You can see evidence of that already in the just concluded Aero India 2021 show in Yelahanka in Bangalore, both by way of American presence there and the kinds of deals that are being signed, and we'll get into those details as well. So a lot of continuity, a scaling up, a gradual scaling up of these things, more tech transfer type of things, and certain shift of emphasis, as I mentioned, on certain areas.
Thank you so much, Anupam. As you said that, we'll get into the meat and potatoes in the subsequent rounds. But yes, an overarching picture. And of course, some aspects of non-defense related aspects would definitely, shape or color some of the defense relationship also between the US and India. Thank you so much, Anupam, for your opening comments. May I now invite Kriti Upadhyay, please, for your opening thoughts and comments on the topic of the day, which is US-India defense relations. And folks, whosoever is watching, maybe please do put in your comments. And please, this is a live show. This is not a recording. Oh, thank you so much. See, because folks often assume that a video is playing, it could be recorded. This is a live Facebook. Hamza Khan says human rights will become a very important focus. Thank you so much, Hamza. Yes, definitely, that's one aspect I think to which Anupam has already alluded. But our focus in this discussion would be on defense cooperation and defense cooperation collaboration et al. That said, please keep your comments coming. We'll be more than happy to take your questions and read them out for the panel also. Kriti ji, please, your opening comments on the topic of the day.
Well, I think I agree with Anupam, the fact that there will be a continuity in most aspects of our defense relationship. US-India defense relationship has pretty much come to a point where there is bipartisan support. US-India is US's a major defense partner as well as an ally, and we just see continuity on that aspect. The fact that our defense pipeline is ever increasing, right from about 200 million a decade back to about $20 billion now. We've done most of the grunt work, right? We've laid the foundations. We've signed our foundational agreements. All four of them are now signed. So I think now it's really about using those foundational agreements, having more of tech transfer and taking our relationship forward. Having said that, when we talk about Indo-Pacific, just right now, the Indo-Pacific strategy was also declassified. I think that the Indo-Pacific centrality and India's preeminent position within that will continue. But I also think that the amount of focus that was on the Indo-Pacific, at least during Trump's time, perhaps will take a little bit of a backseat, just because I think that the Biden administration, at least in the initial year or so, will spend a lot of energy just mending ties with some of its other allies like NATO, EU, and so on. So Indo-Pacific centrality should continue, as well as India's position in there. But I think the momentum, at least initially, will suffer a little bit of a setback. Then finally, in terms of threats to our relationship, and I mentioned this in the last time I was here, and then as well as offline, I think CATSA is a very real threat. CATSA sanctions, if and when they are triggered, it'll be very important for US and India to work that out together, whether the US is going to go ahead and give a waiver authority to India, or how that really is going to work out. I think that's going to be a threat to our relationship that could perhaps set the whole relationship back. But I'm hopeful, and I think that US-India relationship, at least in the defense realm, has just begun.
Thank you so much, Kritiji. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, CATSA, and in the subsequent rounds, I think we will be definitely getting into some of such, clouds which could be there. And CATSA, even if it's a one-off waiver we get, but what does it imply for the longer term India-Russia defense? There has to be a trajectory. The US would be wanting that Russian component kind of draws down in India's portfolio. Thank you so much, Kritiji. And since you mentioned Indo-Pacific, and folks, once again, please, any viewers, listeners who's in the audience on the Facebook page of the US-India Political Action Committee or the Imaginary Institute, please put in your comments. We'll be more than happy to take your questions. We did have one participant giving her or his thought, and we very much welcome any such comments. We are a non-partisan, bipartisan platform. all colors of views are welcome. It's a discussion, not a debate. No brownie points to be scored. A reflective discussion. Now, Kritiji, since you mentioned Indo-Pacific, I think that dovetails into what Dr. Lakhvinder Singh could contribute. So may I invite Dr. Lakhvinder Singh, director of the Peace Program at Asia Institute in Seoul. Lakhvinder ji, how do you see, let's say, sitting in Asia, right, in the Far East and one aspect of the Indo-Pacific, how do you see US-India defense relations going in a big picture as of now?
Thank you once again. Many thanks for having me. I think I'm on board with both the speakers who spoke before me. I'm very, very optimistic. Initially there were some fears that the Biden administration may cause some setback to our relationship, but the initial remarks coming from the new administration are very, very encouraging. People like me who was expressing some doubts, some concerns about the continuity or the Trump policy about Indo-Pacific India US relationship are now much much more settled and relaxed. So as you have seen in my talking to in my writings in my speeches in the last uh, few weeks, I was very much concerned because I was not listening to the right tones coming from the Biden administration. But now in my institute, with my colleagues, we are relaxed because very good sounds are coming from USA. So we are much relaxed and encouraged. And I think India USA today I can say safely that today India USA defense cooperation is on track. It will not divert to any wrong side. So India has already have deepened its defense cooperation. We have already bought a lot of defense equipment from USA in the last decade, more than $20 billion. So it's now relationship is too big to fall. So it will stay. Political changes may not able to affect until this major policy shift in the US administration. So we can expect the relationship to continue on strong foundations. So all the concerns, all the fears we was talking about before the Biden mission took over are gone now. I think now the so-called human rights or Kashmir or other issues may not be able to play big role in diverting the major focus of India-USA defense cooperation. India, but there's some serious issues which we have to focus, especially on the procedural matter. It's not easy for a USA company to invest in India. There's so many procedural hurdles which comes into the now. Now is the time. I strongly feel now is the time we should talk about those issues. How can we encourage and how can we promote USA defense investment into India? This is the right time. So I will be talking in the coming discussion. I will be talking about some practical session where I will try to put forward new ideas, which will encourage a USA defense company to invest in Indian defense sector, and what measures we can take to promote the cooperation. Thank you.
Thank Thank you very much. No, absolutely. I think in these opening comments itself, some of the key questions which will come up in the next rounds have come up, of course. As I would kind of refer to that, but meanwhile, we have a viewer and audience, Simi Mehta. Simi is watching this show. She's saying, "Hi, Dr. Anupam. I'm a former PhD student of Professor K.P. Vijayalakshmi. My question to you is the recent comment of President Biden siding with India on the border standoff vis-a-vis China. Several rounds of talks at highest levels have yet to bring peace at the borders. Does President Biden's comment would raise eyebrows in China? This might be damaging to the damage control that the two countries are trying to bring to pass." Your comments. Thank you so much, Simiji. I will request Anupam to answer your question when he'll be speaking in the next round, and he'll factor in your question. If I may request you, Anupam, when you are contributing to the next round of the panel. Thank you so much, Simi. Please keep it coming. See, that's the fun of a live webinar or a live show-binar, as we call it, that we can have, real-time engagements, real-time questions from folks coming in from anywhere across the world. Thank you so much, Simi. Now, as we conclude the first round of the opening comments, may I now come to founder chairman of the US India Political Action Committee, Sanjay Puri. Sanjay, sir, your thoughts on the overall topic of the day.
Thanks, Robinder. Thanks for having me with such esteemed guests, some old friends, some new ones, etc. So it's a real pleasure to talk about this. I agree with Anupam and Kriti. Defense trade is in some cases a function of foreign policy in direction, vision, also. And President Biden outlined his vision a little bit when he went to the State Department. The focus for him, obviously, Kriti pointed out, is there's a lot of damage control to be done with NATO and EU allies. Russia will be a big focus, which was not before. As you can see, he's talking about pulling out from Yemen. So, in terms of India, the defense trade is a bipartisan issue. But, what is going to happen is there will be some questions, unlike with President Trump, his policy was what you do in your country is your business and not ours. And, it was more transaction focused business. He did open up the sale of drones, which was very, very important, and as well as a lot of other things that were there. India obviously is in a very important situation for United States. It is sitting right next to China and also a large democratic ally with shared values. It has only country probably that has nukes pointed at it from two borders, from China as well as Pakistan. So, what can the United States do? Well, a lot has been going on, and I think we'll continue to see uh, growth in trade, a growth in defense trade. You've seen some announcements between Lockheed and Hindustan Aeronautics, but you're going to see more of them coming. So, as I said, right now it's a transition time. Robinder, this administration has not been around for even a month. They're dealing with COVID. They're dealing with economy, getting the stimulus passed. I understand foreign relations are very important, but this administration's success is going to be judged pretty quickly by how many people they get vaccinated, not how many drones they sell to India. So I think that's the focus right now, Rob.
Thank you, Sanjay. Very interestingly said. Their success in the interim first 100 days or first few months
Mhm.
would be seen by the COVID vaccines and not the number of drones they sell to India or Taiwan or any country.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Very interesting. It sums up. We have, thank you, Simi. Simi is saying, again, should India be concerned about Biden's no reference to India in his maiden diplomatic speech as the president? Simi, I think part of the answer to your questions may would be flowing in this round and the subsequent rounds. So please be with us, and I'm sure your question and your views would be taken up by our panel. Simi is also saying, thank you for taking my question, sir. I'm honored. Thank you, Simi. We are honored that you're participating with us and, kind of growing this community of folks who are engaged in international affairs and learning with each other. Thank you so much. Now, we move to the second round of this panel. In this second round, I have a big picture question, and of course, each speaker can take it any which way and bring in whatever you would like to contribute and share. My question is that, given the recent past experience of the Capitol Hill on January 6th and the overall reset of America, which Biden administration is trying to do, would then America get kind of straight jacketed into a framework out of which it will not be able to wiggle out itself, right? For example, let's say with the coup in Myanmar now. Okay, so America earlier may would have, played some role other and looked askance and looked at some geopolitical aspects, etc. But now it will have to reinforce itself and say, okay, sanctions on Myanmar, no democracy, boom. Similarly, and that's where I think it now reflects to India, as we've been talking the CATSA. If the sanctions on Russia are there, right? How severe would they be, and how severely would the secondary sanctions play out? For example, with other countries who deal with Russia. Of course, in the long term, the intent of the US is that India's engagements in defense with Russia should go down. So fair enough, maybe a waiver of a one waiver we may get, of course, right? So the bigger question is that how much of rigidity would come in US policies do you see, especially related to defense? May I start with Anupam Srivastava? And Anupam, if you could also kindly refer to Simi's question. where she is concerned that Biden made no reference to India in his maiden speech.
Right, of course. And also my greetings to Sanjay. He and I go back to the very founding of US Impact.
Yeah.
Great to see you on this.
Same here.
So it's a wide sweep of questions, and Robinder, I'm expecting that 2 or 3 minutes per person.
Yeah.
I'll try to be very brief. So Biden imposing sanctions. Part of my work, both at Stimson and otherwise, is with the State Department and with some other agencies, CBP, Customs, and Homeland Security, and others, on training and capacity building in multiple countries around the world. And part of what we are doing even now is multi-week, multi-country programs where we are talking about implementation of US and UN sanctions, stemming on or sanctions on Iran, on North Korea, and some other countries. What it means in practice in terms of which aspects and which activities are banned or prohibited, which entities, bad actors in those countries you do not trade with, or what are the limitations on trade, licensing, end user restrictions, and so forth. So this is not a short answer, but this is a way to say that sanctions and the appetite to impose more sanctions will continue. This is part of US law and day-to-day working. And yes, there might be more sanctions forthcoming on Rohingya Muslims or what happened in Myanmar and so forth. China is already trying to block UN condemnation by virtue of being a permanent member. So you will see those things both grow in terms of politics and diplomacy and strife, but also implementation on the ground and other countries. But like Kriti said, there'll be a lot of focus on repairing and building transatlantic alliances and EU, NATO type of things as well. Biden is an old hand. Remember, he's been in the Senate 47 years and works on multiple fronts. So he will have a team, dedicated team of experts working on all different fronts. Then let's pivot to, so on US sanctions on India and CAATSA has been mentioned. One point of correction for those of us who did a heavy lifting on the Nuclear Deal and Atomic Energy Act. This is different. CAATSA sanctions are triggered mandatorily. There is no choice. What the administration can do is simply choose not to act on it. And so what one expects is that Blinken and his team will talk to Delhi in detail and tell them we have the following two things here. One is S-400 being a advanced air defense system can have the ability to interfere with or surveil if we are talking about large combat operations working with India. This is slightly a stretch in terms of how S-400 can listen in and learn encrypted American communication, but that's sort of the sense we have that this is an argument being made. I think the bottom line here, and not speaking too much in public domain, is that I think Washington will make clear that we are moving forward with you on very many different fronts. If you'll allow me, Robinder, one more minute on this, let me go into slightly more details. So, Kriti mentioned the 4 foundational agreements. One of them is COMCASA. COMCASA is optimizing defense trade. And we are talking about C-130Js, C-17s, the P-8I type of recon. What now can happen is that India can acquire Synca radios for encrypted voice and data communication, the KV-119 transponder systems. You know, I just gave 2 examples, but what is coming, what I'm putting together is that a whole package of encrypted communication and real-time joint operations by US and India are now possible because of those kinds of things. So while Washington does want to work together with India and all of these things, it will not want to sanction India because it scuttles the larger plan of Indo-Ocean region, Quad, work against or preparation of robust defensive posture against what China might be doing. It's a wide topic. I'm trying to be brief, but so Washington needs India as the pivot for Indo-Pacific. So they may choose to not act on it, but they're also signaling to India saying, do not move in terms of defense industrial platforms very deeply with Russia on other things like a new series beyond BrahMos on missiles or a new tank system or something. If you
Sure.
want to work with us, let's work on that platform together. Let's
Mhm.
design certain things. This is maybe a one-off agreement signed in 2018. We understand it, and you have a open architecture missile defense system anyway. So you have Israeli Green Pine radars. You have other things. So let this one stay. We'll not make noise about it, but please don't proceed too much on it. Quickly now. Sorry, it's taking
Yeah,
longer because it's
we
such a
can just
wide subject.
Simi's question that should India be concerned about Biden's no reference to India in his speech? If you can quickly give a
No, no, I don't think so. I think he was trying to heal a very divided country with raw wounds. Quickly to Simi's point, please convey my regards to Professor Vijay Lakshmi. Biden is supportive of India on LSE. If you want, Robinder, in the interest of time, we can take China question in the next round, or I can
yeah,
do a
that
very
will
quick
be on
answer.
the next round. Yes, yes. So in this round, if we can move on, then thank you very much. Right, we can conclude on this one. Thank you so much, Anupam. Thank you so much, Simi. I hope you got some glimpses. The nature of time is that we'll be able to offer slices, and I think as you go along, more will be revealed. Folks, whosoever is watching, please do keep your questions coming. As you can see, our panel is happy to take your questions and to throw light with their expertise on your questions. This is going live on US India Political Action Committee Facebook page and Imagine India Facebook page. So, folks, please keep your questions coming. Live show. Thank you. Now, Kriti, may I come to you, please? And you've been doing some work, of course, on a lot of areas. And the topic in this round is broadly speaking, let's say sanctions. What kind of, not a regime of sanctions can we expect from this administration going forward? What would be your take, especially with regards to Russia, because that has a direct bearing on India, which Anupam also touched upon, CATSA.
Yeah, I'll talk about CATSA because I think there's a lot talk about political will and so on, but we need to first look at the very real concerns that the US has, as well as the legislative issues. So right now, if you look at the CATSA sanctions or the modified waiver authority and the criteria for the modified waiver authority, you'll see, and it's not a very long text; it's less than 500 words, and you know you read that and it's pretty clear that under the criteria laid down um, in the modified waiver authority, if you look at it, India doesn't meet that criteria. So even if they want to have even if the US wants to provide a waiver to India, they'll first have to make some legislative changes. So either they'll have to be an amendment to broaden the waiver authority, or there will have to be there will have to be some sort of legislative amendment that will have to be taken. And I think that will be something that, the Congress will have to come behind. So even if they want to issue a waiver authority, it cannot happen automatically, or at least in the existing waiver authority as it exists. And then, talking about a one-off waiver, well, it's not really possible unless, again, you're talking about making some amendments. And I think that is something that needs to be set aside. A one-time waiver is not possible. Now, coming to the very real concerns, Anupam very helpfully pointed out all the defense transfers that are happening, that can happen, especially within the technology front. But that's the whole issue, right? These things can only happen if the US knows that there is security for those technology transfers. Right now, what is the issue with S-400? The issue with S-400 is S-400 is a anti-missile defense air system, right? Now, if the India buys that defense system, and we've seen that happening in Turkey as well, which by the way is a NATO ally for the United States. With India, it's just major defense partner, not a NATO ally. Well, we know Turkey hasn't really been acting like a NATO ally, but let's leave that aside. So you have F-35 program which Turkey was kicked out of because it's a really real concern that Russian access to these air defense signatures or so on, when there's commingling of technology, that is a very real concern, and that could perhaps disadvantage the United States as well as off track the defense transfers between the United States and India because of these concerns. We could have to pull back some of those. So I think those are some of the issues. It's not as cookie cutter anticipate it to be. There's the legislative restrictions. There is the very real concern of comingling of technology. I mean, you talk to anybody in India, they'll tell you India does all sorts of creative stuffs with its technology, right? They'll get a US system, put in, Israeli radars, put all sorts of things. So that's not my concern. So I am I don't know how this will play out, but I think ultimately for the United States, it's really going to be a decision about who they see as a bigger threat. Is it China or is it Russia? Because if it's Russia, then yeah, power to you. You have to put in the sanctions. If it's China, then you want to stand with your ally like India and have some sort of mechanism built in that doesn't disadvantage our ties as well as that whole region.
Very interesting. Thank you so much, Kritiji. Yeah, absolutely. If the CATSA regime or the sanctions are there, then of course, it has to be within the legislative framework or an amendment, as you're saying. And I think therein maybe, that be a question I'll come to Sanjay also. For example, that what he sees that wherein maybe the Indian American community is it, of course, for the benefit of our viewers, playing a role on this. Thank you so much, Kriti. May I now come to Dr. Lakhvinder Singh? Uh, Lakhvinder ji, Simi saying, okay, Simi is a good participant. Thank you, Simi ji, for staying with us. She's saying, sure, sir, I will. I had the opportunity to meet you at SIS. Thank you so much, Simi. May I now come to Dr. Lakhvinder Singh? Before coming to Lakhvinder, I'm sorry if I can pick up a question coming in from the audience. Can we have that question again, please? This is coming from Surina Chauhan. She's saying, I agree with the professor and Sanjay. Although the last administration was transactional and I must say very unpredictable, the Biden administration will take a predictable manner towards India since he is from foreign relations and VP experience. The US-India policies are not made just by the president, also made up of the Indian caucus on the Hill, which is bipartisan, also the new DevSec, who was the CENTCOM leader. Thank you so much, Surinaji, for sharing your view and your comment. Thank you, very much noted. May I now come to Dr. Lakhvinder Singh? I'll put the question to you in a slightly different way. We'll take advantage of you being in Korea for the last 20 odd years and closely tracking Korea-America defense cooperation, right? And this issue has come up. All our panel has been talking about the issue of technology controls and export controls, which, Anupam does capacity building training programs on, and which Kriti has also mentioned, right? So, Dr. Lakhvinder Singh, are there any best practices you can share with us from what you've seen South Korea, America collaboration in terms of defense, transfer of technology, and the building up of the industrial complex? Would you have anything to share with us? Throw some light quickly on that. The example of Korea.
Of course, as you know, USA and South Korea are very strong military partners, and their partnership can throw some lights to build our partnership with USA. In
Yes.
case of India, we have kind of divided our attention between Russia and USA. Sometimes we buy from Russia, sometimes we buy from USA. But in case of Korea, Korea has been slowly buying mainly from USA. So that kind of very clear approach give us very clarity that what is needed to be done to win USA policymakers' confidence and interoperability and other issues. It becomes suddenly solved. Most of the issues are suddenly solved when there's no third player in the third person in the bed. So USA South Korea defense alliance is a prime model. How can we build our relationship? But in case of India, we are a little bit complicated because we have another party involved in our defense procurement procedures. That is causing a serious problem. But US has played a bigger role in building South Korea's defense industry. Now, South Korea's defense industry is growing very fast. But if you study closely, most of the technology, most of the input is coming from US defense industry. So we can learn here also from building our defense infrastructure, building our defense industrial complex, and what kind of role USA can play in building our own indigenous defense industrial complex. Here, last time in the beginning, I told you that we have to set some procedure, some rules. So far, the rules are not favoring USA investment in India. There are some serious hurdles, our controls over our US invest flowing into India are very serious, and we can learn from Korea here. And Korean can give you some ideas of how to smoothen the technology transfer, investment laws, and closer cooperation. That kind of things. So Korea is a very prime example. But so far, I'm sorry to say this, our Indian government has not looked into Korea as a role model for building an India-USA defense alliance. We're not talking about alliance so far. We're just calling it partnerships. So there's a kind of political bill missing somewhere. Our relationship is not reached level the alliance, but South Korea and USA are alliance partners. But we are just fixed only on partnerships. So here's some important lesson that until you have win each other confidence and build a political alignment, there's limit to which you can build a defense cooperation. So they are interconnected to each other. So we
Sure.
have to do some work on the political alignment also, and strategic alignment also. Then we can talk about actual defense investment. Because sometimes our policymakers, especially Congress party, is confused. They don't want to. We have BJP much better than Congress. Congress sometimes they want to go to Russia. Sometimes they want to go to Israel. Sometimes go to France. But Korea is fixed with USA. Mostly their
Great.
alignment is very clear. So I
Sure.
strongly suggest that to strengthen India-Korea defense cooperation, we should remove the irritants, political irritants, which are coming in the way of India-USA relationship.
Thank you, Dr. Lakwinder Singh. Yeah, I think the big message here is that, okay, yes, exactly, Russia, America, whereas Korea is only with the US and in its partnership. So there's some lessons out there. There's a question coming in from, again, Simi, Lakwinder ji, this is a question for you. Quickly, if you can answer. This question is to Professor Lakwinder. Korea has not been very clear in its Indo-Pacific concept. Plus, Japan-Korea ties are not really getting along very well also. US certainly needs India for Indo-Pacific, but it also needs concerted efforts of Korea as well to contain Chinese expansionism in the region. Your views, sir. Lakwinder ji, if you can, in a very quick, 10, 15 seconds, answer the question for Semi.
Yes, this is very true, but now we are not concerned. But we was very concerned about this issue during the Trump administration. Was Trump administration was forcing South Korea to make the call, because of many economic reasons, and diplomatic reasons, and political reasons. South Korean leadership was not ready to make the call on Quad and other political issues. But now Biden is ready to give some space to South Korean leadership. They can keep it a little bit, in the middle. So I think, given the space Biden administration has given to South Korean political leadership, I think things will smoothen out. Tension, earlier last time, Trump was very forceful. He was forceful to choose between China and USA, and that was causing serious problem. That was not a nice way to do the diplomacy. Of course, South Korea is. I'm talking to all the time experts from South Korean defense universities. They were telling, of course, we are with the USA. From our heart is with USA, but because of some political economic reasons, we cannot openly align with the USA in this Indo-Pacific concept. But Koreans
Thank
have never, never, never. I want to assure you, all of you, that South Koreans have never, never moved away from the partnership with USA. They was always with the USA, but for diplomatic reason, good sound was not coming from the policymakers. But at a strategic level, strategic policy level, they never, never thought of dumping USA.
Thank
So
you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I hope, Simi, you got some flavors to your answer to your question. Now, may I come at this round to Sanjay Puri, Chairman, founder of the US India Political Action Committee. And I understand, Sanjay, that you perhaps have to go also soon sometime. Could you, in this round, the whole idea, it's all interconnected, intermingled, the idea of sanctions and growth of the trajectory of US India defense business at the same time also. How do you see it all playing? And also then a subset to a question which has arisen or pertaining to CATSA and any legislative heavy lifting to be done there. So you can pick any which way and dive in, sir.
So, Robinder, I think, as I mentioned before, Anupam, Kriti, and Lakwinder have given some good insights. I sometimes, we look at things also from a political lens because that's part of what we do. And the political lens is pretty clear. defense is an important aspect, but when you start looking at the Democratic Party from a political standpoint, it's not defense is not what is driving it. Minimum wage, when you start looking at it, education reform, those immigration reform, those are the big ticket items from a legislative standpoint. So yes, we will get to defense and all those things, and that will be primarily be from the administration. You have some old hands, like Anupam mentioned. Tony Blinken is there, Jake Sullivan is at NSC. These are people who have tremendous background working with India. But we also, as I said, have to be clear that, Simi asked why was India not mentioned. I wouldn't get too worried about that because, um, who gets, you don't want to be a Russia or a Myanmar or, Yemen in the discussion. I don't think you want to be in that company when Biden is talking about some of these countries. But I think the focus right now is from a political standpoint, it is really achieving, because in the Senate side, they have a very slim majority. And so achieving some of those things is going to be very, very critical. As you know, as the Indian American community, we are obviously going to be doing everything possible to see how we can get the relationship strengthened. Defense obviously plays a key role. It creates jobs in the United States. It also strengthens and a very important ally for us. And China is also a big question mark. We talked about what's going to happen in China, and that's a big issue for us. But you're not going to see too many noises coming from this administration about the sanctions and things like that. And we have pretty strong ties. Remember, at that time, Senator Biden, as Anupam would recall, was really the one of the most instrumental people in the U.S.-India nuclear deal. It would not have happened if it had not been for at that time Senator Biden. President Obama was against. He had put certain amendments, and so had Senator Clinton at that time. And Biden worked very diligently with Henry Hyde to get this done. So there's an understanding of the U.S.-India relations. We obviously have strong ties. There's an India caucus, but beyond that, there are some very strategic friends we have on both sides of the aisle.
Thank you, Sanjay. But then could you also, pick up the thread and share your thoughts on the business side of things? You talked more on the strategic and the relations and such related. What is your take on where the industry or partnerships are going or could go? Uh, is it going to be the same, or will there be a ramp up, or will there be some delays? The trajectory is there, no doubt, but would the trajectory be accelerated, or would it slow down, or would it remain the same in terms of the business?
As I said, we got to give this administration some time to get its bearings. They have some priorities, like a lot of countries have to get their country working back again. COVID, economy, all those things kind of are very, very important. But from a business standpoint, I think the businesses are also taking a little bit of a pause, Robin. They're trying to figure out how this administration is going to look at uh, in terms of the Gulf area. The Gulf has been the biggest area of defense sales for a lot of the large defense companies. Now, when you saw the President Biden's speech, he kind of put a marker out there from a Saudi standpoint, saying about Yemen. They, obviously put it in the perspective. We have a strong tie with Saudi, but we are not going to do. So you're going to see some question marks there. But as far as defense, defense industry has a powerful voice on Capitol Hill. But I think there is going to be a transition time. I would say at least give 3 to 6 months to kind of let the dust settle. As I said, right now, really important to get people vaccinated. Really important to get some of these other core issues. The stimulus bill has just gone through, so those would take priority legislatively.
Thank you so much, Sanjay. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you, Robert.
Sanjay. May I now invite Anupam for the next round? In this round, I think we'll go more deeper into the issue of technology transfer and related, right? And the challenges therein. And again, as Sanjay is saying that, okay, and we do understand, yes, the the focus of this administration, any new incoming, would be domestic and much more in this present times, domestic and rebuilding or repairing, relationships with NATO, figuring out the Indian Ocean, or the Quad, etc. So that would mean there'll be delays, right? Of course. But that said, the issue of technology transfer has been, of course, a key point between US India always. So Anupam sir, where do you see that going, and do you see any newness emerging in that with respect to this new administration?
Uh, Robinder, may I? Because I couldn't get to China, and I don't know how much time we have left.
We have time. Let me share with you. Okay, we normally keep it between 1 hour to 75 minutes, but we have a free. It depends upon our speakers. If our panel is happy to be with us, we are happy to go on for 90 minutes even, right? And if somebody has to leave, please let us know on the private chat, and you could, we understand your pressures of time. So we do have some time,
Okay,
please.
all right. So let me take at least a minute or so on the big China thing before we move to all of this. In fact, China is on the backdrop of all of it.
True.
This is not just a question that Simi asked, but generally a very important subject. I want to say very candidly, different from I normally speak, Beijing does not want to solve the boundary problem with India. Okay? In fact, it will escalate that problem. So you're already seeing that the problem on the LAC has grown in complexity and in scope in terms of deployments, bunkers, soldiers, arms, not just in Galwan and Sikkim and so on, but also now worryingly on the eastern shore, all the way into Arunachal, which China calls southern Tibet. And now they're building small townships and colonies.
Mm-hmm.
There's a larger point I'm making here. China wants to keep India boxed in. It understands that India's sphere of influence is growing, but it's now beginning to collide with Beijing's own very expanded sphere of influence. And that line of collision is not a smooth line. And there will be frictions on it. How to manage it will become the source of skills as well as a test of partnership. So the US and India are going to work on that on multiple fronts. The Indian Ocean and China's own operations in terms of artificial islands, bases, operations, claims in the whole littoral region, all of these kinds of things, and what China is doing with Pakistan through the CPEC, going into the Siachen and POK, and all the way to Gwadar. So these things are going to not only describe India's own pain points, but also work in their own ways in terms of affecting the trajectory and contours of US-India relationship. Okay. I just wanted to mention this. It's a very large thing. And lastly, I'll mention that India is already beginning to pivot itself to a collusive threat along the LAC and the LOC. And that's going to be a defining thing for many, many years. Now, to come back to tech transfers. So, without getting too deep into my type of nitty-gritties, let's just say that, as you all know, the United States did some heavy lifting to make India a member of 3 of the 4 regimes: the MTCR, the Australia Group, and the Wassenaar Arrangement. On the NSG, India could become a member tomorrow. Its control list policy guidelines are already aligned with the NSG. It's sort of like an adherent. It is China and a few China-supported Scandinavian and other countries that are blocking it because they need a consensus vote. Mm-hmm. But that's all that is. So India is already a member, all but name, there, and it already has a indefinite extension and a waiver from NSG and the IAEA Board of Governors. So India can, in fact, trade with NSG member countries on nuclear commerce. That's a result in large part to the US. They're also building a relationship where India has been successfully lifted from a lower category to the highest category now, which is in the export control world, into a country grouping called A1. And it's also got a very elite status called the STA authorization, the Strategic Trade Authorization. What that means is that licensed items that are dual use, that are military and commercial, for their sales to India, they would require a Department of Commerce license. Uh, and for the military items, of course, you'll need a state license. Now, with the STA, what it means is that a number of items that are high strategic value. Okay, let me just take one more step. So there is a military license and a military list. There is a commerce control list. Over the last 3 years under the Obama administration, a number of items, several tens of thousands of items, have been moved from the military to the commerce list, to the dual use list.
Hmm.
Okay? And they have been moved under a category called 600 series. Okay? Now, under the STA 1 authorization that India now has, it does not require an explicit prior approval from the Department of Commerce for
Hmm.
India to access 600 series items from the US. That's a very big step. Israel and a couple of countries are the only ones eligible for that type. All of this is by way of saying that major defense partner, STA 1 status, country grouping A1, and everything else that we have done together has created the legislative and procedural framework for a heavily technology embedded relationship to foster. What we build on it in terms of defense platforms is now going to be tested by our relative organizational approach and our ways of working together. So HAL has become better now working with the American side. So are Tata's and Mahindra and a few others. You have a mix of corporate and public sector companies working together.
Hmm.
Lockheed and Tata have been so successful that all of the fixed wing manufacturing for the F series is now happening out of India. And last year they exported 600 million worth of things. Okay. Rajnath Singh has yesterday said that we are raising our defense production targets. So exports were 1.3 billion last year. He's aiming for 2 billion in the next 3 years or 5 years. So major targets. The test will now be under the existing DTTI or other government initiatives that they have, Pentagon and MOD. How well are they able to actually operationalize and do these things? Labor, IPs, very business-like. You were asking Sanjay earlier.
Hmm.
Those kinds of things are going to draw and determine how well India and the US work. The intent is to keep working and growing that piece.
Thank you.
The strategic glue is both a concern about China and other things where India and the US agree with.
Hmm.
The momentum and the force in all of this will come from how well we are able to manage differences, manage expectations, and last thing I'll mention is remove the decibel, lower the decibel, just take it to a working group level, stop grandstanding and talking in public about differences, just work through these issues. India has as many reasons to improve efficiency, not just in ease of doing business, but in all areas. And the
Sure.
US also should stop being so critical and just work with India at a ground level. Okay.
Certainly. Thank you so much, Anupam. Meanwhile, as you were speaking, we've had some questions and comments coming in. Folks, please do keep your questions and comments coming in. We'll quickly read them out as I move next to our next panelist, Kriti Upadhyay. Comment coming from Simi. The current US administration during the campaign days were critical on India's position on Kashmir, abrogation of Article 370, etc. Now that they're in power, would this be a pain point? Definitely so, Simi. I think all the speakers are kind of referring to it, but let's see, the jury is still out. But I mean, the trajectory is going good. A question is also coming in from Amit Bhai. He's saying, sir, can you elaborate more on the China-India border issue? How are they able to build communities on Indian soil without censure from the international community? Amit Dhaka. Thank you so much, Amit. I think we are going to be referring to some of it, but not getting into, I think, too much granular details of that. We need to understand the challenges which are out there. Now, may I come to Kriti? Before that, Surina Chauhan saying, I agree with the professor. India has been tardy of building any partnerships with any country or administration. One second. Yeah. The real partnership in defense is not buying, but working together in the defense R&D. Absolutely, Surina. Actually, I think that's what I think we are referring. And maybe Kriti, you can take this on now. The point is, as Anupam is mentioning, yeah, sure, the legislative frameworks are there. We are STA one kind of a thing, etc. But where is it really moving on the R&D and technology transfer side? Because there is still a reluctance amongst US, let's say, companies to transfer the technologies. They would rather have a buy sale kind of a thing rather than a joint collaboration. Is that the sense, What is your take on this, Kriti, please?
So, Urbinder, I do agree that a lot of the groundwork has been done for technology transfers, and the framework is there. But yeah, we haven't really, uh, at least till now, haven't really achieved much, right? We haven't capitalized on our potential as much as we could. So, right from having DTTI, which was set up a rather low point of our relationship, to US going and giving India the STA1 status, which is only accorded, allowing it to buy defense equipment that was till then only reserved for NATO allies, or even having something like having these little mechanisms that are just in India, like the rapid reaction cell at the Pentagon, which whose sole purpose is like to accelerate to accelerate legislations and anything that has India component in it, in case in case there are any aberrations that that legislation is suffering. But I think the real reason that we haven't had as much technology transfer as we perhaps should, there are a few. So, I am an Indian. I believe in India's strategic autonomy, but the legacy issues from Russian equipment is is a real threat for the US. And I mentioned commingling of technology even earlier, right? Like if you have like air defense, you're selling, if you're US, you're selling India, air defense equipment, and then you also have a Russian air defense system there, and they perhaps know each other's signature or so on. So commingling of technology is a very real concern. And India is making strides. So India has, you look at the figures, India has lowered its path dependency on Russian equipment, while also increasing its defense from buying of defense equipment from the US. So, in the same time that India decreased acquisitions from Russia by about more than 50%, it actually increased acquisitions from the United States more than 500%. But having said that, you have these issues as we see with S-400, where India makes a major capital defense acquisition, which does create very real threats for the US. So I think India has to pivot right now, and Harsh Ringla, when he was then the ambassador, even mentioned that when India has an option, it does pivot, and it is choosing US and those allies more than Russia, because it's not just about the United States; it's about the other allies as well. Today United States is having concern about commingling of technology as India does more defense acquisitions, which is going to do right now because its defense needs are right now retiring. Other countries can have similar issues, be it Israel, France, or so on. So I think it's really about India now having to make a choice about getting rid of some of those path dependency on Russian and making choices with friends and friends of the future. Um, and then when you come to R&D, now I actually work. I think I mentioned last time I was here. I'm actually working on a higher education, State Department funded higher education project right now, and I
Hmm.
definitely think that in any aspect of any relationship, if you want to make great strides, then education, research is where you start. Now there are a lot of issues even in terms of having joint research, because India's stand on IP patents are sometimes raise anxieties from the US side, which at times does limit how much R&D or sort of things, cutting edge stuff we can do. Similarly, some of these other issues like data localization issues, or the other issues, business issues, compliance, regulatory issues that I'm sure you're perhaps more familiar than me. Also, create don't make it very easy for friends to work together and do cool things together. I think those are some of the issues. But having said that, I know I'm talking and harping a lot on the pain points. But having said that, I think I am on the whole really hopeful about US India, and I think we've laid the ground. Now it's just time for us to come and start working together, and I do see that happening.
Thank you so much, Kriti. And as you were talking, I see we have more comments coming in from again Simi. Thank you, Simi. You're a very enthusiastic participant. Thank you so much. I'll just read out your comment and then we'll move on. She's saying the US ambassador to the UN, yeah, Linda Thomas Greenfield, was not fully and confidently supported of India's permanent membership in the UN Security Council, etc. Yeah, yeah, that was noted by some folks, but maybe those are the initial steps. And by the way, the UN Security Council is such a such a path ahead, I think we should be very careful with the political capital that India invests in, asking for a UN Security Council permanent seat. I mean, uh, anyway, that should be could be a topic for a whole different panel altogether. Thank you so much, Kriti, for your thoughts. Again, yes, technology transfer, and the idea of commingling. I mean, equipments have to talk to each other. So one is, if it's a Russian or American, would they give access to each other? And the fear that you would lose out your secrets, or your secrets essentially to the other party, which you do not want at all. Thanks so much, Kriti. Now, may I come to Dr. Lakhvinder Singh? The same question, more or less, on US India defense. What do you see? Of course, all of us are hopeful and we see the trajectories out there. The train has already left the station long ago. The train is moving along, chugging along. The issue is that how fast can the train move on these tracks, and it comes to, like it said, the outer circle of a city or something, and the train is stopping at a signal for hours and hours, and then again gets a signal and then moves on. So would that be a kind of an analogy of US India collaboration, more pertinently, as Anupam and Kriti have both mentioned, the legislative and many of these aspects have been framed out. Now it's a matter of getting things done, or let's say real partnerships to come on the ground. So, do you see, or where do you see such partnerships in US India defense areas coming along?
Okay, thank you very, very much. I would like to talk about technology transfer a little bit in detail, so please give me some time. So I will talk to some basic evidence which are causing serious problem. Even though they are very minor plants, but they are in the bigger picture they cause very serious problem. But so far we are not able to address them seriously. So I would like to start from the beginning. I think the one of the biggest hurdle in the technology transfer or advanced cooperation is our is this mismatch between the objectives, Indian objectives, and USA objectives. So
Hmm.
when USA companies or USA government talk about technology transfer, they have bigger picture in mind. They want to build a strategic cooperation. They want to build a theater interpretability. So they always talk about some bigger ideas. But India, on the other side, have talking about job promotion. They talk about promoting jobs, promoting the Indian defense industry. So their their purpose, their objective of getting defense cooperation with USA is very narrow and limited. Sometimes these two objectives do not match with each other. And USA is talking on a different platform. Indian policymakers are talking about different. They are more concerned about creating jobs, more concerned about creating indigenous industrial complex. So sometimes it causes message. So they are not talking in the same wavelength. So this is a very serious problem which we have to. So USA Indian policymakers have to take one more step to the higher level. Then they will, when they start talking to each other on the same platform, then they can talk business. So far, we are not talking at the same level. Secondly, there is serious which is very serious problem which is causing our defense procedure, defense procurement procedure is very complicated, very complicated. Sometimes USA companies are not used to that kind of procedure. Our bureaucratic setup is too complicated to handle, and sometimes USA companies who are trying to enter into Indian defense industry give up, seeing the so much procedural hurdles created by government of India to avoid corruption. Corruption in defense industry is a serious problem in the defense corporation. Those hurdles has been created to stop the corruption, but somehow they cause serious problem in the flow of technology. So we have to balance between stopping the corruption, making the flow of technology from USA to come into our India side. Thirdly, we have to talk about our defense offset policy. I think our defense offset policy was well intended. It was very good, and but so far it has worked in a very opposite direction. We are forcing sometimes up to 30% of the investment should be sent back to India in different format. But sometimes the defense company which are trying to invest in India don't know how they can send back their money. In a agreement. So we have to be a little bit more accommodating and a little bit more liberal in our defense offset procedures. Sometimes it's not easy for a defense company to reinvest back into Indian defense industry. But Indian government insists that at least minimum 30% of the total money they are investing into USA should come back to. So this is very very illogical sometimes, very make no sense, and sometimes everything is going well, but USA companies don't know where they should spend back. So it causes bigger problem. Other thing is sometimes when we there this other important procedure, which is what is called request for proposal. Our request for proposal is very complicated and very time bound. Sometimes we say reply within 30 days, reply within this proposal, but USS is not ready. Their procedure, their method of working is different. They need more time because USA company has to take permission from the USA government to recommend some technology transfer. Sometimes recommend this technology transfer comes a long time, but given the time frame, they are not able to apply. So I recommend that we have to amend our request for proposal procedures. We have to be very accommodative to justice. We have to, as I told you, we have to do political alignment is very important. We should. I will go to even this extent that we should create a special request for proposal procedure for GSA only, keeping in mind USA government's procedure to approve the technology transfer and to approve the investment to India. Because USA is special case, we should prepare a special procedures for USA so that we can accommodate some of the hurdles which our defense companies, USA defense company faces in India. And another thing is that when Indian companies, sorry, USA companies invest in India, they make a proposal, they make but when they are evaluated, mostly evaluation is done based on the cost. Cost is the major factor in deciding. But Indians I don't give the attention to the technology quality. What kind of a quality being offered? Technology is being offered. So we are wrong here. Sometimes USA companies, government is offering a very high quality technology to India, but Indian side still stick on our financial side. What's the budget? What is the proposal? So if the lowest budget is there, we choose that. We do not care about the technology. So we should have a. I strongly recommend that we should have a dedicated USA dedicated cadre who can evaluate the technology part also. So far, we are only focused on what we call budget on the defense side, sorry, financial side. No. So far, our experts are only focused on the budget. No, but we have no especially USA dedicated experts who can evaluate the technology being offered by USA to India. We are a journalist. Sometimes we miss the point. We are not able to understand what is being offered, and that causes the problem. So there's serious mismatch between the USA and Indian defense cooperation. This is the practical level I'm telling you. Many of my professor friends tells me, USA friends tell me that they offered this to India, but India refused. Not because it was expensive, because India couldn't understand what is being offered. So we need a highly dedicated experts team in Indian foreign policy, sorry, defense procurement establishment who can properly understand and sometimes pinpoint that we need this. So sometimes we have to relax our rules, relax our procedures. Until we do that, we cannot get sensitive technology from USA. So far
Fair
we are
enough.
just so far we just treating USA as just one of the supplier. No, USA is not one of the supplier. USA is the supplier. Until we don't treat USA as the supplier, our defense cooperation with USA will not go to next level. So this is my strong recommendation today that we should set up a special dedicated team who can evaluate all the proposals which are coming from USA. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lakwinder. Absolutely. Yes, I'll just refer to what you're saying. Meanwhile, we have comments coming in from viewers. Folks, whosoever is listening, watching this show, please do put in your comments and questions. We do have some folks who are, in a very serious manner listening to this conversation and giving their comments. We had Sorina Chauhan. She was saying that we are tired of hearing words like technology transfer. We are talking about jointly solving a problem, just like just like jointly developing the next generation robocraft. India needs to step up the game. I think that's what actually Dr. Lakwinder Singh, you're also mentioning when you're saying that India needs to fashion out maybe a dedicated policy of its, DPP with respect to the US, a special policy, for example. Talking of technology to use a platform, why should I, as a Lockheed or a Boeing, share our technology secrets? The Department of Defense companies in the US do not share these technologies even with the US government. It's an absolutely noted, Surinaji. Thank you very much for your comments. Uh, may I now move to the concluding round? And here, beginning with Anupam Srivastav, sir. Of course, you can pick up the thread any which way as the discussion is developing, or if you would like to add or give a different perspective on what our earlier panel has been talking. Anupam, with you, sir, for wrap up comments.
Well, thank you. I think it's been a fascinating discussion. I'll say one more thing, picking up on Dr. Lakhvinder's point. Yes, I understand the frustration and the helpful suggestions. I'll only say this to you that the government finance rules, the GFR 15, actually does not say L1 as the lowest bidder only on cost issues. I have read it very carefully. And for your viewers, Robinder, may I share that for 3 years I was the managing director of the government's national investment facilitation body called Invest India. And we've done billions of dollars worth of work. So I have a very close reading of this. Essentially, this is what it says. It says first shortlist the companies in terms of technical competence. And when all companies that have been shortlisted that meet the requirements of that proposal, then open their financial bids and see which one can offer it at the lowest cost. And then choose that one. I used to do this in my government work and have them send 2 separate sets of envelopes and leave the financial ones in the locker. We first do the shortlisting and then open the financial ones and give a composite score on both ones there. And the ones that came closest or the best were the ones that were awarded. And I discussed this with Ministry of Finance, and there was never a problem in any of the awards that I chose. These kinds of messages have gone to Dr. Ajay Kumar and people at the Department of Defense Production. They have also seen the results of how much offsets, instead of expecting about $2 to $3 billion of defense offsets, India only had got 5 million till 2 years ago. So the message has come loud and clear. That's why you will see that the offsets have been substantially changed from DSP 5 to DSP 6 to the DAP 2020. There's a lot more of thought given to the indirect offsets. But as I said earlier, things are not perfect in India. And only when the problem comes and raises its ugly head does it force the collective mind of the government to try and solve it. And even then, it's a painful process. It's not a very, it's not a swift or easy process. So, but I can only tell you that from what we have seen, the mindset of the senior leadership is to do everything that's possible to fix the problem, because they realize that the larger gains is what they are going for. So they don't want to miss the forest for that one tree. All right. Maybe that should be the theme for me to close, to say that India, as a large insular country, sometimes there is an echo chamber. We have endless discussions on a lot of topics. And in doing so, people forget to see the bigger picture of why a certain country behaves the way it does. We have to remember that 2 things, I think. One is that every country will choose what is in its own national interest. There's a saying in Washington, please do not make your friendship personal, okay? Or don't take friendship personally. In other words, countries will do hard-nosed negotiation on their own national interests. And where they align, you will work together. India should do the same. Another message is it should stop trying to be liked in the international system. It should try to do what is right for India in the international system. We have very capable diplomats in this 2-year term that India has at the Security Council. And India has a heft, not just before it became the COVID manufacturing company, but India has a large standing in the international system. What people want with India is follow through, reliable, stable agreements and follow throughs. If India can deliver that, if India can stop or take action when, there are cases of medical transcription or certain companies in Noida running major scams on US health insurance or older people. And things like that. Government of India needs to act swiftly on those things and send a very clear message that enforcement will be strict and uniform and swift. If we can do those things and iron out the teething problems of working with US and other partners, then India will have a much brighter future, not only dealing with the US, but in securing the position that it deserves in the international system. So with that, let me close. I thank everybody for participating and listening patiently to me.
Thank you so much, Anupam. As you were talking, I think there's a quick follow-up question. If you can give a quick answer to that, coming from one of our viewers, asking what's the status of the civil nuclear deal.
The,
It would just a quick one, if you can. I mean, in 5-10 seconds. Yeah.
right. So the deal is already in place. We have the deal. The deal required India to create a separation plan, and so all the rest of what India is building are in the civilian sphere. Our reactors are working. We have actually made progress. So our 700 megawatt series are also coming on stream. The IAEA and the NSG exemptions mean that all NSG member countries are exempted from this requirement of full scope safeguards in India. In other words, we are at par and there is no stoppage from any country in terms of civil nuclear commerce with India. So it's very much in place. The membership only gives us a prestige, but in all other respects, we are members, and we are contributing very well, by the way, in the technical experts group meetings in the MTCR and in others. So India has a lot to contribute, and even on nuclear matters, India is a founding member of the IAEA and is on the board of governors. It contributes on nuclear security and GICNT and many other things. So we have nothing to worry about in terms of our standing in it. It's just the heft and continuity and professionalism of India in delivering certain things that need to be improved.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. On the civil nuclear deal, I think the grounds are clear and open now. Now it's up to the GE. Actually, what's been happening is also that some Westinghouse has had its own problems with, corporate, so to say. GE Hitachi partnership also had an issue because Hitachi, being a Japanese, company, had some restrictions. But now Japan, India have a civil nuclear deal, so that GE Hitachi partnership could move. But then you had Areva on the other hand, which had some environment issues. So probably the whole thing is somewhere in a little bit of a limbo, it seems.
Well, that I didn't want to go that deep, but yes, all of that plus the reinsurance, the Indian
Yeah,
reinsurance pool.
yes, yes.
Uh, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Anupam Srivastav, for your contributions and perspectives. May I now come to Kriti Upadhyay, please. Kriti ji, your thoughts, wrap-up thoughts in this last round, and herein, if you could share kindly with us what you think of this particular idea also, that wherein we are talking about, let's say, Dr. Lakhvinder's idea that there could be a dedicated, vehicle for US India uh, defense relations, especially in terms of the technology or joint projects, etc., or India's defense procurement policies, a special vehicle, special corridor between the US and India. If you could, what do you think of that? Would that be something which could be helpful, or your overall perspectives as your closing comments?
Well, I definitely do believe that our defense procurement uh, can use some reform, because a lot of time there are a lot of issues, as Dr. Lakhvinder mentioned. There are issues in at least other countries having to understand, as well as work in terms of those our current procedures. So I do think there is always scope for reform, and there are folks who've written very extensively on this. I forget, but there's a terrific Carnegie report just on this. The reforms needed in India's defense procurement. So there's work that has been done there, and I think it's about time Indian government does embrace. But as Anupam also pointed out, having had some first-hand experience, that reforms are also happening, but still a long way to go. On my concluding comments, I think I'm always ever hopeful in the U.S.-India relationship, and I think there will be continuity, as I pointed out earlier, and there'll be much that we will be doing together, just especially in terms of defense trade, because India's much of India's fleet is now retiring, and I think that's a great opportunity for us to strengthen our relationship. And think back to the DTTI when it was first set up. We were talking about making airplanes together. So and that time our relationship wasn't even in the best of shape, right? So seeing how far we've come, I think there's much that we'll be doing together in the next few years. And in terms of Indo-Pacific, again, I think India's centrality will remain, but I don't see that being as a major concern for the US, at least in the future. But I do think that we'll continue making some strides on Indo-Pacific security, and I hope we go beyond just conducting exercises together and actually coordinate strategies as well as responses in whatever is possible without getting into an alliance treaty partner. For China, I know that a lot of people have been concerned about Biden administration's outlook towards China. It is clear that the Biden administration will engage China, but they're also going to retain the hot stance. So I wouldn't worry too much about China on whether Biden is going to be soft on China or not. But I do believe that the engagement with China that the U.S. does will perhaps remove the maneuvering space that India has on its own part in terms of dealing with China. So I think that is one area to watch out for. The second area to watch out for, of course, is CATSA, which we talked about a lot. So I think that is a real threat, and I think all of us, especially in the India lane, should definitely be talking more about this and figuring out how we're going to solve this issue, because US India together have solved some really big issues, just talking about the nuclear deal and everything. So I know this is not as big a mountain, but it's still something that we need to figure out together and galvanize support, especially in the Hill, to ensure that a waiver is granted if indeed that is something that works out for both countries. So ever hopeful is my verdict. Just today the army contingent from the US arrived in India, and we're going to be doing our youth abhyas exercises, the yearly ones. So that I think that says a lot.
Thank you so much, Kriti Upadhyay. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your verdict of a rosy or a sanguine, and a positive future ahead obviously absolutely holds. It's just a matter of the bandwidth. But here, yes, of course, it seems that both the CATSA issue and China, and how the Biden administration plays out with China with respect to its own national interest, as all of the panel has been talking, that each country looks at its own sovereign interest, and then howsoever the others kind of add up to it. Thank you so much, Kriti, for your concluding thoughts and remarks. May I now come to Dr. Lakhvinder Singh for your concluding remarks, sir, on US India relations in defense. How are we seeing? Meanwhile, we had a question from Simi saying, now Seoul does not mention North Korea as an enemy. Is the result of efforts by President Trump to thaw its ties with North Korea? Simi, this is a discussion on US India defense. So we will keep aside Korea and North Korea questions for the time being. Dr. Lakhvinder Singh happens to be in Korea, but he's an expert on defense related matters, strategic affairs. So we are drawing his attention towards US India perspectives. So Dr. Lakhvinder Singh, your concluding thoughts on US India defense relations, and of course the issues of CATSA, the issue of China, of course, with respect to President Biden's the US administration, how they would look at it. And then again, coming back, the acceleration, the reforms, some of the ideas that you mentioned sound pretty interesting and good, but how much is the appetite for that? And in case those don't pan out, how do we see the relation going ahead?
Thank you very much. I will try to be brief, as much brief as possible. As you know, to take the relationship to next level, both USA as well as India needs to do something, take some extra steps. From the USA side, USA is now trying to build a strategic partnership with the USA, with India. But USA government as well as USA companies don't trust India, and there are still too much restrictions. And that's not a good sign. So if USA really wants to partnership with us, they have to ease the restrictions, the control, the procedures. The moment you start going to nitty gritty, many of my colleagues who are happen to be the part of the negotiations feel that is not that US is not sending right signals to take it to next level. So those controls, those restrictions, those has to be eased if US really wants to have a friendship with us, and that's point number one. Number two, USA agencies always complain that USA India procedure is very bureaucratic, very tough to follow. So I strongly suggest that they should start talking about front loading, licensing, decision making. It means they should prepare in advance. Interagency approval should be done as much advanced as possible. So because India is has to work within a framework, legal framework. Sometimes it's not easy to accommodate everything. After all, India is a sovereign country. So even if we need some technologies strongly, there's a limit to which we can. So sorry, USA government agencies, inter agencies should approve their interoperability. They should work in advance to have a approval network. So if this is done, then it will smoothen the technology transfer, defense cooperation, much bigger level. So these are two from USA side. I strongly recommend. From India also, sometimes Indian policymakers, Indian defense experts become over optimistic. They want so much from USA at one go. But we have to be very realistic. We have to be very realistic to when we expect technology from USA. We have to be very realistic. We cannot, because our political relationship with USA is not static, not stable. So sometimes our defense experts forget that our political cooperation with USA is up and down, but our defense experts forget that part of the story and they start expecting too much from USA. So our defense experts or defense ministry should be very realistic when they set targets to get technology from USA. So being realistic is very important part of our technology transfer from USA. Number two, now we are trying to build our private enterprises, right? Our private defense industry. But when we bring our technology from USA, it has to be safe. It has to be controlled. But so far, the procedure to control, score the technology from USA is not strongly in place. So Indian government should step in. This Indian government should sign kind of agreement where it can guarantee that all the technology being transferred to USA private companies is safe in India. So that kind of a procedural requirement where South Indian government can personally guarantee that whatever you give to our private players it will be in safe hand and will not be transferred to third party. That kind of procedures, and many of my colleagues have strongly recommended that if really India really want to set up the private sector in the defense industry, they have to set up those procedures which can secure sensitive technology going into wrong hands.
Sure.
Regarding China, as I told you in my opening remarks, in the beginning I have some doubts. I have started feeling a little bit nervous, but now after I have listened to President Biden's speeches and other experts talking about China, I'm very relaxed and in a very good mood and happy mood that Trump policy will not shift too much. It means our strategy to defend the Indian Ocean and defend Asia Pacific together will stay. So even the US Biden was talking about getting closer to China, but I don't think at the policy level there will be much change. So we can relax and enjoy that we are going to have a very good next 4 years. Regarding North Korea, I'm very happy because Trump was trying to build try to build some special relationship with North Korea. But Biden is very balanced approach. Balanced approach. They are not in hurry. So USA South Korea relationship will remain a very safe zone. So if South Korea USA relationship is safe zone, India Korea relation will remain safe zone. Do you understand? So it means
Yeah.
South Korea, India, USA can work together. So it is
Right.
potential of cooperation between three countries is very high. So as a whole, I would like to say we are in a very good situation. We should all the fears which was coming from Biden administration before the elections are now much solved, and we are in a very happy state of affairs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As I was listening to your comments and views, it was coming to me RRR. One, you're emphasizing on reforms, then realistic, and then the last one, you're saying we should be relaxed. So, fair enough. That's interesting. Wrap up with you, Dr. Lakwinder, saying May I thank? We have some more comments coming in. I will just read out these comments because we want to kind of encourage our guests to participate. We will not get into answering them. We have a viewer who's saying, I feel global power hierarchy will be reordered post Corona 19 as less hit nations get an early start while severe hit ones take more time to spring back on track. Thank you so much. Yes, very much noted. Another one from Amit Bhai coming saying, one sticking point with the Biden administration and China is the Uyghur issue. This could work in the favor of India and turn US India into a closer relationship. Thank you, Amit Bhai, for your comment and for your thought. Very much appreciated. Another comment about North Korea is not a threat to anyone. They've got enough internal problems to tackle themselves. Nukes are primitive, and for defensive showcases, they're not insane to use them at all. Opinion. Fair enough. Thank you, please, for your opinion. Uh, Another one, last one, maybe comment. South Korea needs Indian nuclear technology. Please sell them to South Korea, not this regime. Fair enough. Opinions we all have each. Thank you so much for folks who've been tuning in and offering your comments and thoughts out here. Thank you so much to such a brilliant panel we had. Thank you so much, Anupam Srivastava uh, for joining us, uh, non-resident fellow at the Stimson Center with us. Thank you so much, Kriti Upadhyay ji, research associate with the CSIS. Thank you so much, Dr. Lakwinder Singh with the
Thank
Asian
you.
Institute. Uh, Thank you for your brilliant participation, comments, and a recording of this would be put up on YouTube and would also be shared with all of our eminent panel. And then you can, share it or amongst your other friends and colleagues, etc. Thank you once again. It has been my privilege and honor to have hosted such a brilliant set of minds and heard them out and teased out some of their expertise and their insights. Also, of course, very ably helped by the questions which came in, because questions which come in during a live broadcast help us to kind of keep ourselves on our toes. So thank you once again to the eminent panel. Thank you once again to the viewers. This show now ends. We will see you now next Saturday noon hour with another topic, another distinguished panel with you. Thank you so much from the US India Political Action Committee and from the Imagine India Institute. This broadcast ends now.
Well, thanks, Rob. Good to see